Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. We are live here tonight on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, all the places. And we are going to be moving forward with our book for our book club, which is The Gospel According to Spiritism, right? So those of you guys who are joining me for the first time, first of all, welcome. Second, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And third, this book club is all about reading literature from various spiritual, mystical, esoteric, occult, magical traditions. And we are starting off with the tradition of Spiritism. And we have gone through the first 3 books in the 5-book series written by the pen name Allan Kardec. And you can find the first 2 books on my YouTube channel at themagicalsolution.com. That is the Spirits book and the Mediums book. And then the book that we are reading now is The Gospel According to Spiritism. Now, again, if you're joining me for the first time, do not feel intimidated. Don't feel like you have to have read the first 2 books in order to hang out with us today, or don't feel like you have to read the previous chapters of this book in order to hang out with us today. The information is always fresh, it's always new, and the whole point of this live is for me to kind of, interject my own commentary and to kind of explain things a little bit better than the book explains it. So definitely stick around. I would love to have you here. And then for those of you who have been joining us on the book club, thank you guys so much for continuing to show your support and to hang out with me. So first, I'm going to share my screen here so that people can join in with us. And the way that I can do that is by, I don't know, I did it before. Hold on. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. So we want to share this one. All right. Can you guys see that? Leave me a comment in Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram. Leave me a comment that you can actually see the chapter. You guys here on TikTok, unfortunately, I can't show you the book that I'm reading, but if you go to my YouTube channel and watch it live, you can join along with us. So we are on chapter 22, and that is, do not separate what God has joined. The subcategories within this chapter are the indissolubility of marriage and divorce. So this is going to be fun, right? We all love when religion tells us what to do about marriage and who we get to love and who we get to have sex with. It's just fun times for everyone all the way around. So let's see what they have to say here. So the indissolubility of marriage, they are going to quote Matthew chapter 19, verses 3-9. And that says, the Pharisees also came to him in order to test him, saying to him, it is permitted for a man to divorce his wife for whatever reason? And he responded to them, have you not read that he who created man at the beginning created them, male and female? And that he said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the 2 shall become one flesh. Hence, they shall no longer be 2, but one flesh only. Therefore, let no man separate what God has joined. They said to him, but then why did Moses command that the husband give his wife a letter of separation and divorce her? And he responded to them, it was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But in the beginning, it was not like that. I also declare to you that he who divorces his wife, except in the case of adultery and marries another, commits adultery, and that he who marries the wife that another divorced also commits adultery. Again, we're quoting the Bible here, right? And then we're going to see what Spiritism says about that. But see how the Bible like loves to tell like women what to do. Like this whole thing is talking about what you should and should not be doing with women and with wives, and you know what your role is depending on how you treat these women and wives. And no one asks the woman like, hey lady, what would you like to do? Right? So Spiritism says there is nothing immutable except what has come from God. So everything that is the work of humans is subject to change. The laws of nature are the same at all times and in all countries. Human laws change according to time, place, and intellectual progress. In marriage, what is of divine order is the union of the sexes to carry out the replacement of people who die. However, the conditions that govern this union are of an order that is so human that throughout the entire world, even throughout Christendom, there are no two countries where such conditions are completely the same, nor is there one where they have not undergone change over time. The result is that, in the eyes of civil law, what is legal in one country and at a given time is adulterous in another country and at a different time. This is because civil law is meant to regulate family interests, and these interests vary according to the customs and local needs. Thus, it is, for example, that in certain countries, only religious marriage is legal. In others, a civil marriage is also required. In others, lastly, a civil marriage is enough by itself. Nevertheless, in the union of these sexes, besides the divine physical law common to all living beings, there is another divine law as immutable as all God's laws and exclusively moral, the law of love. God has willed for individuals to be united, not only through the ties of the flesh, but also through those of the soul, so that the mutual affection of spouses is extended to their children, and that there should be two instead of one to love them, for them, and care for them, and enable them to progress. In the conventional conditions of marriage, is this law of love taken into consideration? Not in the least. The affection of two individuals attracted to one another by a mutual sentiment is not checked, and in the majority of cases, this affection is shattered for the sake of the other interests. What is sought is not the satisfaction of the heart, but the satisfaction of pride, vanity, and cupidity. In short, the satisfaction of all interests of a material nature. When everything is well according to such interests, the marriage is said to be suitable. And when the material assets are all matched, it is said that the spouses are also suited for each other and ought to be very happy. However, neither civil law nor the commitments that it contracts can replace the law of love if it does not preside over the union. And the result is that what has been joined forcibly separates on its own, that the oaths sworn at the altar become perjury if they are pronounced as banal formula. And as a consequence, there are the unhappy unions that end up becoming criminal and avoidable double disgrace if within the conditions of the marriage, the only law that sanctions it in God's eyes would not be left out. The law of love. When God stated, the two shall be one in flesh only, and when Jesus says, do not separate what God has joined, one must understand the union according to the immutable law of God and not according to the changeable laws of human beings. In the civil law, then, superfluous, and should we return to marriages according to nature? Certainly not. The civil law is meant to regulate social relationships and family interests in accordance with the requirements of civilization. And this is why it is useful and necessary, but variable. It must be provided because civilized human beings cannot live like primitives, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prevents it from being a corollary of the divine law. Obstacles to the fulfillment of the divine law arise from social prejudices and not from the civil law. These prejudices, although still alive, have already lost much of their influence in the midst of enlightened cultures, and they will disappear altogether with moral progress, which will finally open people's eyes to the countless ills, wrongs, and crimes that result from unions entered into solely out of material interests. And someday we will ask ourselves if it is more humane, more charitable, more moral to chain to one another two individuals who cannot live together than to restore them their freedom, or if the perspective of an indissoluble chain does not increase the number of irregular unions. So what they're saying here, okay, what they're saying here is, and this goes very well with what's happening today, but what they're saying here is that the union of two individuals, right, the marriage of two spirits, if you will, are really a union or a marriage of souls where the two become one. So this is the concept of the twin flame. This is the concept of, soulmates. This is all kind of where the New Age movement stems these ideas from. But the idea altogether, in totality, more so, is that the union and the ritual act of union in God's eyes through the ritual of God's whatever is a holy one. It becomes a situation where not only are you unionized through the flesh, but through the spirit as well. Now, when you start to approach it from this perspective versus from a procreative perspective, which is what religion has done throughout time immemorial, especially the monotheistic ones. But when you move the idea from we union in the eyes of God and become one in spirit, right? When you take that idea and you just reduce it down to we come together in order to procreate, that's a problem, right? Now, it would be easy to fall into that. Hey, Eric, what's up, baby? It would be easy to fall into that because we're dealing with a spiritual practice that involves reincarnation, right? So this idea of reincarnation, of course, you are going to want to partake in the reincarnating of future spirits. So it's so easy to fall down this slippery slope of procreation and marriage and having marriages and unions solely for the sake of procreation. But the reason why Spiritism doesn't go down that slippery slope and doesn't use reincarnation as the excuse for that slippery slope is because we in today's day and age are living in a situation where not only are unions unhealthy and people are divorcing like crazy, but parenthood is also a very unhealthy situation. And so kids are being removed from their parents. Parents are giving up their children. Children are homeless or being orphaned. So there is not a lack of reincarnated souls. There's no lack of it floating around on this planet. And so because of that, this idea of unionizing soul to soul versus flesh to flesh makes much more sense. So now we can bring into the fold gay couples, trans couples. We can start bringing into the fold people who may have a difficult time procreating. And we can include them into this equation of partaking in the act of reincarnation by adopting, by surrogates, by whatever, right? And so the process of reincarnation will never stop, whether you're the one procreating or not. So it's much better to look at it from this perspective than to look at it from, well, we need a vagina and we need a penis. That's what we need in order for this thing to happen. Or this one needs a cow and this one needs land in order for this exchange to happen, right? We're not doing that. It's 2023, right? Okay, so now we're on the next subcategory, which is divorce. Okay. So divorce is a human law with the purpose of legally separating what is in fact already separated. It is not contrary to God's law, since it merely reforms what humans have stipulated and is applicable only in cases in which the divine law has not been taken into account. If it were contrary to divine law, the church itself would have to consider it as transgressors, those of its leaders, who, by their own authority and in the name of religion, have imposed divorce on more than one occasion. A double transgression, therefore, since it is practiced only with material interests in view and not to satisfy the law of love. So again, circling back to the law of love, what they're saying here is, divorce ain't a thing. It's not really a thing. It's just simply law. Because in reality, when you force two people together, whether it's you're forcing them together because of, money or status or for procreation purposes, the minute that they fall out of love, or the minute that they are together and there is no spiritual exchange between them, when their souls are not one, then theoretically, the divorce already happened. They've been divorced. The spirit is not unioned, right? So look at it that way. However, Jesus himself did not consecrate the absolute indissolubility of marriage. Did he not say, "It was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives"? This means that ever since the times of Moses, separation might become necessary when mutual affection is no longer the sole objective of marriage. And Jesus adds, however, "But in the beginning, it was not like that." Which means that at the origin of humankind, when people were not yet perverted by selfishness and pride and lived according to God's laws, unions based on reciprocal sympathy and not on vanity or ambition did not give room to divorce. Jesus goes even further and specifies the case in which divorce can have a place: adultery. Now, there is no adultery where sincere mutual affection reigns. It is true that he prohibits any man from marrying a divorced woman, but one must keep in mind the customs and character of the people in those times. In cases of adultery, the Mosaic law prescribed stoning. Wanting to abolish such a barbaric custom, a penalty was needed, and Jesus found it in the disgrace attached to the prohibition of a second marriage. It was in some ways one civil law replacing another civil law, but which, like all laws of such nature, had to pass the test of time. Okay? So adultery is one of those things where, once again, it would have never happened had the union itself been based on something real, based on God's law of love, right? So I'm going to give you a really beautiful example. So me and my husband, we got married twice. We got married the first time right here in New York, civil, just to kind of get that out of the way, because we just couldn't stand not having a legal marriage, right? But then we got married a second time for the spiritual purpose, right? For the real spiritual purpose. And I was blessed enough to have that second marriage in India with the full Indian wedding and all that good stuff. But throughout all of that, the horses, the flowers, the ceremonies, throughout all of that, one part stuck out to me so much, and it popped out, especially while reading this. And it is the part where, the priest says to us, that one of the vows of a couple is that they share in their spirituality. It's an actual vow. That you must share in each other's spiritual practices, because a true married couple must be unionized in spirit. Right? Now, some people think just getting married in front of a priest in front of a bunch of people, exchanging rings and a kiss is enough to say that we were married in spirit. And to some it is. But to others, it is just a formality. And that's the problem. Because there's nowhere in the vows of Catholic, Christian, Jew, there's nowhere in these vows of marriage that says that you guys must join in this way. They'll say things like, join hands before the light of God, or, exchange a kiss before God, or whatever. Like, they'll say things like that, but to make an actual vow that says, I will engage in spiritual practice with my partner because we are now one in spirit, that shit is not everywhere. And that's what this is really referring to, because when you do it like this, the idea, hopefully, is that there will be no room for divorce because you've been joined on such a deep level. Oh shit, we on chapter 23. Who wants to keep going? Does anyone want to keep going, or do we stop here? What do you want to do? Hello, Stephen. Oh, thank you. Oh, he had to go. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Thank you, Stephen. Heavenly blessings to you too, honey. You know what? Fuck it. I'm in a mood, and my husband's playing video games. So I'm going to keep reading. So let's do this. All right, so chapter 23, we're going to entitle this chapter Strange Morals. The subcategories within this chapter are whoever does not hate his father and mother, abandoning father, mother, and children, leave to the dead the care of burying their dead. I have not come to bring peace, but division. Ooh, I know where they're going with this one. But let's see what is being said here. So we're going to have a couple of quotes. The first quote is going to come from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 27, and verse 33. And we're also going to quote Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. A large crowd of people was walking with Jesus when he turned to them and said, if anyone comes to me but does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not want to take up his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Therefore, anyone among you who does not renounce everything he has cannot be my disciple. He who loves his father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Ooh, it's about to get juicy. You know what? I'm almost tempted to ask you guys to leave a comment and tell me what you think Spiritism says about this. Because they're controversial, they're considered strange morals. And these particular quotes get thrown out so much, especially when it comes to family matters. Like, you'll see things like, a jealous mother of her new daughter-in-law, right? And she'll say something to her son like, I am your mother, I gave birth to you, I am God in your eyes, how could you love her more than you love me? It says in Luke and in Matthew that you should never put anyone before God, before me. And they will take it as if Jesus was speaking about them in particular, right? So stuff like this happens all the time. But let's actually see what Spiritism has to say about this. So although very rare, certain words spoken by Christ make such a strange contrast that one instinctively rejects their literal meaning, and the sublimity of its doctrine does not suffer any harm because of it. Written after his death, none of the Gospels were written during his lifetime. One may be led to believe that in this case, the depth of his thought was not well expressed, or what is no less probable, the original meaning may have suffered an alteration in passing from one language to another. It is enough for an error to be committed just once for it to be repeated in copies, as is so often seen in historical events. The word hate in this verse from Luke, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, is such a case no one would even think of attributing it to Jesus. So it would be pointless to argue about it, and even less to seek to justify it. One would first have to know if he did in fact state it, and if so, one would have to determine if, in the language in which he expressed himself, this word had the same meaning as in ours. In this verse from John, he who hates his life in this world will save it for eternal life. It is certain that it does not express the idea we attach to it. The Hebrew language was not rich and contained many words with several connotations. One of these examples is the word in Genesis that designates the phases of creation, and which also serve to express a given period of time and the period of a day. Thereafter came its later translation by the word day, and the belief that the world had been the work of 6 24-hour days. The same applies to the word that meant either camel or rope. Ropes were made from camel hair, and which was translated as camel in the allegory of the eye of a needle. Moreover, one must take into account the people's customs and character that influence the distinct spirit of their languages. Without this understanding, the true meaning of certain words is lost. From one language to another, the same term can bear different emphasis. It might be an insult or a blasphemy in one language, but insignificant in another, depending on the idea one attributes to it. Even in the same language, certain words lose their significance over time, and that is why a strictly literal translation does not always express a thought precisely, and in order to be exact, one must sometimes use equivalents or paraphrases rather than cognates. These remarks find a special application in the interpretation of the Holy Scriptures, and the Gospels in particular. If one does not take into account the environment in which Jesus lived, one is exposed to errors regarding the meaning of certain expressions and certain events due to the tendency to liken everything to their own experience. Therefore, one must rid the term hate of its modern acceptation as contrary to the spirit of Jesus' teachings. So I'm going to pause here for just 1 second and say that is bullshit. And I'm going to say that with my whole ass chest, because why now? Why now? You have Spiritism has an explanation for everything else fucking Jesus said. But now that Jesus is talking some real shit, using the word hate, using this, using that, now all of a sudden, this is out of his character. There may be some mistranslation. There may be some, no. If you can be that confident with everything else he said in these previous chapters, you should be that confident with this. I could tell you what I think Jesus said. I think everyone has an opinion on what Jesus said. But don't just assume that because it's different from what he has said before, that it's not relevant. Please remember that these books lasted throughout history. 2,000 and something years, 3,000 years. These books made it. And they made it for a reason. And these particular things that are in here stayed in there for a reason. So we need to unpack that as a community. And I hope that one day we can sit down and relook at our gospels, at our spiritual texts, and really, ask these spirits to come and talk the talk, right? Like, how come no one was doing mediumship with Jesus? You know what I'm saying? Like, why wasn't someone talking to Jesus saying, hey, what did you mean by this? you know? All right, on to the next subcategory. So abandoning father, mother, and children. Matthew chapter 19, verse 29. Whoever has left his home or his brothers or his sisters or his father or his mother or his wife or his children or his lands for my sake shall receive 100-fold and shall have eternal life as an inheritance. Luke chapter 18, verse 28 through 30. Then Peter said to him, as for us, you can see that we have left everything and followed you. And Jesus said to them, verily I say to you that no one will leave his home, his father, his mother, his brothers, his wives, or his children for the kingdom of God, who will not receive much more in this world and in the time to come, eternal life. Another said to him, Lord, I will follow you, but first allow me to dispose of what I have at home. And Jesus answered him, anyone who has put his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God. Okay. Ooh, great question, Samantha. We'll get to that at the end, I promise. So without argue over words, here we must look for the thought, which was obviously this. The interest of the future life surpasses all human interests and all human considerations. Because such thought is in accord with the substance of Jesus' doctrine, whereas the idea of renouncing one's family would be in its negation. Moreover, do we not have before us the application of these maxims in the sacrifice of our interests and family affections for our homeland? Would anyone blame a son for leaving his father, mother, siblings, wife, and children to march in defense of his country? On the contrary, he would not be worthy of merit for leaving the comforts of his home and the warmth of his friendships in order to fulfill a duty. Hence, there are duties that are greater than others. Does not the law make it an obligation for the daughter to leave her parents in order to accompany her husband? The world is replete with cases in which the most heartbreaking separations are necessary. However, affections are not broken because of it. Distance does not lessen the respect or the solicitude that is owed to the parents, nor the tenderness toward the child. Thus, one can see that even if taken literally, except for the term hate, these words would be neither the negation of the commandment that orders the honoring of mother and father, nor the sentiment of parental affection, even more so if taken according to their spiritual meaning. These words had the purpose of showing through a hyperbole how imperative the duty was to concern oneself with the future life. And furthermore, they must have been less shocking in a culture and a time in which, as a result of customs, family ties had less strength than in a morally more advanced civilization. Such ties, weaker in early cultures, become strengthened with the development of sensibility and moral sense. Separation itself is necessary for progress. It occurs in families as well as in cultures which would degenerate if there were no interminglings and if they did not incorporate one another. It is a law of nature as much in the interest of moral progress as it is for physical progress. These matters are examined here solely from the earthly point of view. Spiritism enables us to see them from higher up by showing that the true bonds of affection reside in the spirit and not in the body, and that such bonds cannot be broken by separation or even by the death of the body, that they are strengthened in the spirit life through the spirit's purification. A comforting truth that provides much strength for bearing life's vicissitudes. Now, what's interesting here is, once again, we need to clarify what we're talking about, right? So we're using Christian doctrine to explain Spiritism, but remember, when Jesus is speaking to within the Christian doctrine, they are posing it as if Jesus is speaking about a physical afterlife, a heaven and a hell, or, well, a heaven, right? Because hell is not really a thing until like fucking Dante's Inferno, right? But my point is they're using God's words, or Jesus's words in Christian texts, are being used to describe the importance of that afterlife, meaning give up everything now, be in suffering now, and you will have eternal life in heaven with me and my Father. So in that particular case, it very much is kind of a dick ask, right? And so to me, and this is why I think that this whole explanation with Spiritism is such bullshit. To me, the word hate, or Jesus saying something to the effect of, disavowing or hating mother and father to love me, doesn't seem that far-fetched. I mean, the man said he will bring out a sword. The man flipped tables in the marketplace. The man was not gentle. Jesus was a fucking Jesus was a G, yo. So like, we really need to understand that when he's talking about that, that's what he's talking about. Now, Spiritism, because Spiritism has reincarnation as their sort of afterlife situation. This idea is more about, understanding that the sacrifices that you make, which include people, places, things, right, for the progression of your spirit, in the grand scheme of things, will be worth the sacrifice, because you will be progressing your spirit, and when you come back, you start off again at a higher place. So because you start off at a higher place, all the things that you sacrifice in this lifetime will come back to you tenfold. Like, you won't have to worry about that, so either way, it's one is really like, it's all about the suffering now, and then you'll die and be happy. Whereas the other is, you suffer for the progression of spirit so that you can come back. When you come back, you continue to progress, right? Both of them are good ideas, but there are, what's the right way of saying this? There are there are assumptions that are tied to both of these things. Right. So this idea of eternal reward in the afterlife versus just doing the right thing, sacrificing to do the right thing, because it literally benefits everyone as well as you in your spiritual progression. See, these are two different messages, right? And so that's why we need to constantly make sure that we revisit this and understand who exactly that we're talking about here, right? So the next subcategory, leave the dead the care of burying their dead. He quotes Luke 9, chapter 9, verses 59 and 60. He said to another, "Follow me." But he responded, "Lord, first I must go and bury my father." And Jesus replied, "Leave to the dead the care of burying their dead. As for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of heaven." That is a tough pill, right, guys? OMG. But let's see what he says. So what could these words mean? Leave to the dead the care of burying their dead. The preceding considerations show first that under the circumstances in which they were spoken, they could not express criticism against someone who regarded it as duty of filial devotion to go and bury his father. However, they entail a deeper meaning that can only be understood with a more complete knowledge of the spirit life. Life in the spirit world is in fact the true life. It is the normal life of the spirit. Its earthly existence is only transitory and passing. It is a sort of death when compared to the splendor and activity of the spirit life. The body is nothing more than a coarse garment that temporarily cloaks the spirit, a veritable fetter that holds it imprisoned to the earth, and from which it is happy to be delivered. The respect one has for the dead is not bound to the physical matter of the body, but to the remembrance of the absent spirit. It is analogous to that which we have for the objects that belong to the deceased and were touched by him or her, and which are kept as mementos. This is what this man could not understand by himself. Jesus teaches him by stating, "Do not worry about the body, but think first of the spirit. Go and teach the kingdom of God. Go and tell others that their homeland is not on the earth, but in heaven, for true life is found only there." So once again, we're looking at this, we're interpreting it from a spiritist perspective, but we're interpreting Christian doctrine, right? So everything is about heaven. It's about the afterlife, right? So, but when you talk about it in terms of spiritism, like actual spiritism, what do we look at it in this way? We see that heaven can be here on earth. This is a training ground, true. We do suffer, true, right? But the path to progression by natural law and natural consequence will be that of a blessed life. What the fuck do you mean by that, Leilani? What I mean is, once you start walking this path, in the beginning, it's going to look a lot worse than it actually is. But then as you keep moving forward, you are going to see the blessings roll in, because now you are walking in truth. You are walking the path. And when you walk the truth and when you walk the path, you open yourself up to the beautiful things in life, right? You are more receptive to those things. And so to us, there is no reason to reward ourselves or do things now to be rewarded later. It's not like that. For us, it's like part of our path, part of our journey is to do good now because it benefits everyone. And I just so happen to also progress because of it, right? So, the body is, to us, still a very important vessel, a very important piece of the puzzle. And for many espiritistas, for many spiritists, they also work in some kind of death work too. You'll see a lot of espiritistas also being muerteros. You'll see a lot of espiritistas also being necromancers. You'll see a lot of spiritists also working with the dead, because we understand that, yes, the spirit of the vessel is so important, yes, but the vessel itself too should be honored. We take care of our cemeteries, we take care of our graveyards, we clean off these headstones, we give offerings. Like, there is a ritual and care for the deceased. But it also actually fits with what Jesus is saying here. Keep in mind that when he talks about leave the dead for the dead, basically, what he means is everyone else who's not following the path, let them worry about the dead, because they are walking dead. That's literally what he means. All of these people are zombies who have not come into their truth yet, because if they had, they'd be walking this path. But since they are not, they're just there. So leave the dead to them. You are on the path of purification, and death should not be in your hands. right? And there are still espiritistas and spiritists and spiritualists who still believe this way too. Like there are a lot who feel like there are very specific roles, right, for each type of person. And when you choose a role that is very elevated, you are not allowed to be tainted by certain earthly things. And that includes eating meat, touching dead things, picking up feathers, things that would taint your path of purification. And then there are other people who have roles where their role is just that, to dispose of the dead bodies, to do the sacrifices, to do what, you know what I mean? So like everyone has like their piece that they have to play. In this particular case, according to these Christian doctrines, and even to the majority of Spiritism, it is a path of purification. So there's no like worrying about any of that other stuff. Instead, we worry about the spirit itself, the spirit of the deceased themselves. Okay, next subcategory. I have not come to bring peace, but division, right? So Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 to 36. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to separate a man from his father, a daughter from her mother, and a daughter-in-law from her mother-in-law, and a man will have as enemies those of his own house. I have come to cast fire upon the earth, and what do I desire except that it be lit? I must be baptized with a baptism, and how I am in a hurry for it to be accomplished. Woo! Spoken like a true mystic. We're going to quote Luke chapter 12, verse 49 to 53. Do you believe that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I assure you, but on the contrary, division. For from now on, if there are 5 persons in a home, they will be divided against one another. 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. The father will be divided from his son and the son from his father, the mother from the daughter and the daughter from the mother-in-law from the daughter-in-law and the daughter-in-law from the mother-in-law. So, was it Jesus, the personification of tenderness and goodness? Jesus, who never ceased proclaiming love for one's neighbor, who could say, I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to separate son from father and husband from wife. I have come to cast fire upon the earth, and I am in a hurry for it to be lit. Are not such words in flagrant contradiction with his teaching? Is there not blasphemy in attributing to him the language of a bloody and ruinous conqueror? No, there is neither blasphemy nor contradiction in these words, because it was he himself who spoke them, and they bear witness to his great wisdom. See, pause, time out. You see, I don't fucking get it, you guys. I don't get it. How is it that now that Jesus is acting like a G again, it's cool, but when Jesus was acting like a G before, it may have been a mistranslation. See, y'all, you need to be very careful. You need to be discerning when you're reading things, right? But let's see. It is solely the form, a bit ambiguous, that does not express his thought precisely, and this fact has given rise to misunderstandings as to their true meaning. Taken literally, they would tend to transform his holy, peaceful mission into a mission of subversion and discord. An absurd conclusion rejected by common sense, for Jesus could not have contradicted himself. Every new idea necessarily encounters strong opposition, and there is not one that has not been implemented without struggle. Resistance in such cases is always in proportion to the importance of the results foreseen. For the greater the idea, the more numerous the interests it will ruffle. If it is notoriously erroneous, if it is deemed inconsequential, no one would be concerned with it and will allow it to pass, knowing it has no viability. However, if it is true, if it sits on a solid base, If a future is foreseen for it, a secret presentiment warns its antagonists that it is a danger to them and to the order of things in whose maintenance they are interested. That is why they throw themselves against it and to its adherents. The measure of the importance and results of a new idea, therefore, may be found in the excitement that its appearance causes, the violence of the opposition it provokes, and the degree and persistence of the anger of its adversaries. Jesus came to proclaim a doctrine that would undermine the very basis of the abuses upon which the Pharisees, scribes, and priests of his time were living. And so they killed him, believing they could kill the idea by killing the man. But the idea survived because it was true. It grew because it was in the designs of God. And upon leaving an obscure village in Judea, it planted its banner in the very capital of the pagan world, in the face of its most obstinate enemies, those who had the most interest in combating it because it subverted the secular beliefs they held onto more out of self-interest than conviction. The most dreadful struggles awaited its apostles there. The victims were innumerable, but the idea grew day by day and emerged triumphant, because as the truth, it rose above its predecessors. It should be noted that Christianity arrived when paganism was already in decline and was struggling against the light of reason. It was still practiced in form, but faith in it had disappeared and only personal interest sustained it. As we know, interest is tenacious. It never yields to the evidence. It becomes angrier as the reasons that oppose it become more peremptory and better demonstrate its error. It knows very well that it is in error, but that does not bother it because true faith is not in its soul. What interest fears most is the light that opens the eyes of the blind. Error is advantageous to it, so it holds on to it and defends it. Did not Socrates also teach a doctrine analogous to a certain degree to that of Christ? Why then did it not prevail in the midst of one of the most intelligent cultures on earth at the time? Because its time had not yet come. Socrates sowed an unplowed ground. Paganism was not yet worn out. Christ received his providential mission at the proper time. Not all the people of his time, far from it, were up to the level of Christian ideas, but there was a more widespread aptitude for assimilating them due to the beginning of a sense of emptiness that popular beliefs left in the soul. Socrates and Plato's had opened the way and had predisposed their spirits. Unfortunately, the followers of the new doctrine were not able to agree on the interpretation of the master's words, most of which were clothed in allegory and figures of speech. From its very beginning, numerous sects have flourished, all of them claiming that they alone possess the truth. Not even 18 centuries have managed to put them in agreement. Forgetting the most important of the divine precepts, the ones that Jesus had made the cornerstone of his building and express condition of salvation: charity, fraternity, and the love for one's neighbor. These sects have cast anathemas at one another and have fought with one another, with the strongest crushing the weakest, stifling them in blood, torture, and burning at the stakes. Victors over paganism, Christians went from being persecuted to being the persecutors. It was with an iron and fire that they planted the cross of the unblemished Lamb in the two worlds. It is a confirmed fact that religious wars have been the cruelest and have made more victims than political wars, and that in no other wars have more acts of atrocity and barbarity been committed. Has it been the fault of Christ's doctrine? Obviously not, since it formally condemns all violence. Did he ever tell his disciples, Go kill, massacre, and burn those who do not believe as you? No, because he told them quite the contrary. All people are brothers and sisters, and God is supremely merciful. Love your neighbor, love your enemies, do good to those who persecute you. And he further said to them, whoever kills with the sword shall die by the sword. The responsibility, therefore, does not fall to Jesus' doctrine, but to those who have interpreted it wrongly and have made it an instrument to serve their passions. Those who have ignored these words, my kingdom is not of this world. In his profound wisdom, Jesus foresaw what would occur. But such things were inevitable because they were connected to the inferiority of human nature, which could not be transformed just all of a sudden. Christianity had to pass through this long and cruel trial of 18 centuries in order to show all its strength, since, despite all the evil committed in its name, it had emerged pure from it. This has never been disputed. The blame has always fallen upon those who abused it. Following every act of intolerance, it has always been stated, if Christianity were rightly understood and practiced, this would not have happened. When Jesus stated, do not believe that I have come to bring peace but division, this thought was following. Do not believe that my doctrine will be established peacefully. It will bring bloody battles, using my name as a pretext. For humans will not have understood me or will not have wanted to understand me. Separated by their beliefs, brothers will unsheath their swords against one another, and division will reign in the midst of the same family, whose members do not share the same faith. I have come to cast fire upon the earth to clean it of error and prejudice, just as fire is put to a field in order to destroy the weeds. And I am in a hurry for it to be lit so that the purification may be quicker, for out of conflict the truth will emerge triumphant. Peace will follow war. Universal fraternity will follow sectarian hatred. The light of faith will come after darkness of fanaticism. Then, when the field has been prepared, I will send you the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who will reestablish all things. That is, he will render understandable the true meaning of my words, so more enlightened individuals will finally be able to comprehend them, putting an end to the fratricidal battle that divides the children of the same God. And finally, weary of combat without result, which has left only desolation in its wake and has brought trouble into the midst of families, people will realize their true interests lie regarding this world and the other. They will see on which side the friends and enemies of their serenity are located. All will then shelter themselves beneath the same banner, the banner of charity, and all things will be reestablished on the earth in accordance with the truth and principles that I have taught. Spiritism has come at the right time to fulfill the promises of Christ. Nonetheless, it cannot do so without destroying the abuses. Like Jesus, on its path to meet pride, selfishness, ambition, cupidity, and blind fanaticism, which, struck in their final defenses, attempt to bar its way and raise obstacles and persecutions against it. Therefore, it too must fight. But the time of struggle and bloody persecutions has passed. Those that it will have to endure are all of a moral nature, and their end is near. The former lasted for centuries, and the latter will only last for a few years, because the light, instead of starting from one single point, has sprung forth from all points of the globe and will more quickly open the eyes of the blind. These words of Jesus must therefore be understood as referring to the rage that this doctrine would provoke, the momentous conflicts that would be its consequence, the battles that would have been born before it was established, just as it happened to the Hebrews before they entered the promised land, and not the result of a premeditated plan on his part to sow disorder or confusion. The evil would come from humans and not from him. He was like the doctor who comes to heal, but whose medicine provokes a healthful crisis in removing the unhealthy ills of the patient. Woo! And that is the end of chapter 23. So how are we doing? How are we doing with all of that information? It is a lot. It is a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions? So Samantha had a question earlier, and this was in regards to whether or not any of the Spiritist mediums spoke with Jesus. And the truth is, many Spiritist mediums have claimed to speak with Jesus. There's no question about it. There are a multitude of spiritualists, spiritists, spiritistas, mediums, fucking crazy people, everybody and their mother who have claimed to speak to Jesus, know Jesus, have a personal relationship with Jesus, get messages from Jesus, etc. But up to this point, we have not seen like a true, like a really good doctrine, if you will, a codices of Jesus' words, newly and freshly reinterpreted by him. You know, but correct me, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Like if there is something out there that I just haven't read yet, I am so down to read it, and just let me know so I can check it out. Okay, talk to me. There's a bunch of people here. Everybody's so quiet. Okay. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then the last thing I will say is please note that this book club will continue to be kind of random for a little while. So just kind of keep an eye out for when I announce the book club. Second, registration for my Spiritism, my spiritual development intensive has opened up again. So a new semester has started or will be starting in September, right? Back to school. So get yourself on the website to register ASAP because I have a limited number of seats. I usually stop at 10 people. And I don't want you to miss a seat. So definitely go grab one. What else? What else is also happening? Sunday, I will be having an interview with one of my dear Espiritista friends. And we are going to be discussing the importance of dreaming with regards to Espiritismo, mediumship, the ATRs, etc. So we're going to get into nice, good conversation about dreaming. So definitely check that out. That's Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, I look forward to really hanging out with you guys. And the misas will be starting back up again. My misas I used to do only once a month on the last Fridays of the month. But what I noticed in doing those is that they tended to just be too far apart. And I feel like people were kind of losing the momentum with it. So the misas are going to be starting back up again in September as well. But this time they're going to be held Sunday mornings from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Okay. That's Eastern Standard Time. So again, just go onto the website to register for the misas. Now, mind you, the misas are by invitation only. So if you are not a part of my Facebook group, if you have not graduated from my intensive classes, or if you have not gotten any type of formal training in mediumship or in any type of espiritismo or spiritism, I do not recommend coming to these misas. They are for experienced mediums only, and that is for the safety of the mediums in the session. And so yeah, the spiritual development class will be starting September 4th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and will continue on the first and third Mondays of every month. Okay. It's a 10 class intensive, and there will be homework, there will be practicums, there will be tests. I updated a lot of it since the last round. So there's going to be a lot more information, a lot more jam-packed activities. So I'm really excited to launch this one again. I'm also currently working on the syllabus for the Spiritism Intensive 200 class. So this is an intensive for intermediate and advanced mediums to expand their knowledge even more so. I'm working on that syllabus now. I'm giving myself a few more months before I will officially say that it's done. And I will do a few preliminary launches with a few trusted mediums to get some feedback before I actually launch it to the public. Okay, so, but keep an eye out for that as well. Also, make sure you go to my website to sign up for the email list. It is free. And in that email list, you'll receive updated information like what's going on with the Magical Solution, with me, with the podcast. You'll also get a lot of free downloads, PDFs. I love to just kind of give out some free things. You'll also sometimes get an article here and there, a nice blog post here and there that I'll write, or a guest blogger or a guest contributor. Either way, it's a great email list. I have been slacking on it over the last year. I think the last email I sent out was like January of this year, and the year is pretty much almost over. So I am talking about it now because the emails are going to be kicking back up again. But I promise I still will only do maybe 2 emails a month. I'm not going to spam you guys. I get it. I sign up to all of my friends' email lists, and did you know that I created a separate email just so that I can sign up for my friends' emails list, because they send so fucking much that like I could not have it in my regular email. Otherwise, I would never see any of my shit. So I have an entirely separate email just to support all of my friends. And I visit the email every once in a while. I go through all of their emails and I read all of their stuff and I support them. But it's just so much. It's just so freaking much. So I promise I will not do that to you. Okay. Let's see what else. There's going to be a promotion coming up soon for my readings. There's going to be a 10% off coming up really, really soon. Because my birthday is next month and I want to celebrate by, giving one person a free reading and giving everyone else some discounts. And let's see what else. Oh, and my podcast is now officially on Spotify. So you can now take my show on the road with you. The Spotify podcast is both a video and an audio, so you can take it on the road with you. And I'm really excited about that. So make sure you check that out. And I think that's it for my announcements, you guys. So next book club, we are going to be starting with chapter 24. Right? What the fuck? What chapter was it? I think it was 24. We're going to start with 24 next time we get together. Okay. So I love you guys. Zelma, thank you so much for being such a ride or die. You are always there. There are a bunch more people in here, but no one has said their name. So I just want to say thank you to Samantha, to Steven, to Zelma, to Jen. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you over here on TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, we'll see each other soon. Okay, guys, make sure if you have any questions, just email me or go to one of my social media outlets and send me a DM or a message. I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, guys, love you. Have a beautiful, beautiful night. And I will see you on Sunday for our interview. Okay, bye.